The EU's sanctions have not stopped Russia's military machine, but they have had a significant effect on Moscow's revenues and isolated the country diplomatically. On February the 24th, Brussels acted swiftly. Just hours after the invasion started, EU leaders announced the first measures against the Kremlin, and many more followed. Member states have so far adopted 9 rounds of sanctions, and the 10th is on its way.
So far, I think the sanctions that the EU has introduced have had a limited effect on Russia's ability to finance its war. But a lot of these sanctions are designed to work in the long run, not in the short run.
The first round targeted political and military leaders, banning Russian planes from flying to Europe, also introducing export bans on sensitive technology. The EU also joined efforts to freeze Russian assets abroad and excluded major Russian banks from the SWIFT financial transactions system. But there is a reason to explain Russian resilience.
Russia has a relatively large national wealth fund, so even if they now have a big budget deficit, even if the economy is shrinking, they still have $155 billion in their national wealth fund, and they can finance their war through that. However, that money is slowly decreasing.
As the war escalated, the EU pushed for new measures, including against the Russian energy sector. Brussels first banned the import of crude oil and introduced a price cap. And later, the importation of refined oil products. At the same time, Europe decreased its dependence on gas from Moscow, all of which implies the Kremlin has lost its biggest client.
There is still LNG coming, there is still some gas coming through pipelines, but 90% of that trade has been eliminated in 1 year. That's a major achievement, and more than I think anyone expected the EU to accomplish in a year. Certainly Putin did not accomplish that.
But to what extent are sanctions hurting Europe? According to analysts, last summer extreme gas prices were mostly a result of Russia's manipulation of the market and not related to sanctions. At the same time, Philip Lausberg also denies that Europe is the one suffering more than Russia is.
Europe has not seen a recession last year, and Europe is predicted not to see a recession this year. So compared to that, Russia it's said to have seen a reduction of 5% of its GDP in 2022, and it's going to be much worse in 2023, most likely.
The EU is now working to fight the circumvention of sanctions, and a group of countries led by the Netherlands is proposing to open a sanctions headquarter in Brussels.